The audit objective relating to database access is to verify that database access authority and privileges are granted to users in accordance of their legitimate needs. Audit procedures for testing database access controls. First, responsibility for authority tables and subschemas. The auditor should verify that database administration or DBA personnel retain exclusive responsibility for creating authority tables and designing user views. Evidence may come from three sources. First, by reviewing company policy and job descriptions, which specify these technical responsibilities. 2. By examining programmer authority tables for access privileges to data definition language or DDL commands. And 3. Through personal interviews with programmers and DBA personnel. Second, appropriate access authority. The auditor can select a sample of users and verify that their access privileges stored in the authority table are consistent with their job descriptions, organizational levels. Third, biometric controls. The auditor should evaluate the costs and benefits of the biometric controls. Generally, this would be most appropriate where highly sensitive data are accessed by a very limited number of users. Fourth, inference controls. The auditor should verify that database query controls exist to prevent unauthorized access via inference. The auditor can test controls by stimulating access by a sample of users and attempting to retrieve unauthorized data via inference queries. Encryption controls. The auditor should verify that sensitive data, such as passwords, are properly encrypted. Printing the file contents to hard copy can do this. Backup controls. Data can be corrupted and destroyed by malicious acts from external hackers, disgruntled employees, disk failure, program errors, fires, floods, and earthquakes. To recover from such disasters, organizations must implement policies, procedures, and techniques that systematically and routinely provide backup copies of critical files. Backup controls in the flat file environment. The backup technique employed will depend on the media and the file structure. Sequential files, both tape and disk, use a backup technique called grandparent, parent, child, or GPC. This backup technique is an integral part of the master file update process. Direct access files, by contrast, need a separate backup procedure. GPC backup technique is used by sequential files batch system. The backup procedure begins when the current file or the parent is processed against the transaction files to produce a new updated master file or the child. With the next batch of transactions, the child becomes the current master file and the original parent becomes the backup or the grandparent file. The new master file that emerges from the update process is the child. Direct access file backup is when the data values in direct access files are changed in place through a process called destructive replacement. Therefore, once a data value is changed, the original value is destroyed, leaving only one version of the file or the current version. Special recovery program is used if the current version is destroyed or corrupted. Offsite technique is a backup files created under both GPC and direct access approaches should be stored offsite in the secure location. Audit objective relating to flat file backup. To verify backup controls in place are effective in protecting data files from physical damage loss, accidental erasure, and data corruption through system failures and program errors. Audit procedures for testing flat file backup controls. First, sequential file or GPC backup. The auditor should select a sample of systems and determine from the system documentation that the number of GPC backup files specified for each system is adequate. If insufficient backup version exists, recovery from some types of failures may be impossible. Second, backup transaction files. The auditor should verify through physical observation that transaction files used to reconstruct the master files are also retained. Without corresponding transaction files, reconstruction is impossible. Direct access file backup. The auditor should select a sample of applications and identify the direct access files being updated in each system. From system documentation and through observation, the auditor can verify that each of the system was copied or taped or disked before being updated. And last, offsite storage. The auditor should verify the existence and adequacy of offsite storage. This audit procedure may be performed as part of the review of the disaster recovery plan or computer center operations controls. Backup controls in the database environment. Since data sharing is a fundamental objective of the database approach, this environment is particularly vulnerable to damage from individual users. One unauthorized procedure, one malicious act, or one program error can deprive an entire user community of its information resource. Also, because of data centralization, even minor disasters such as this failure can affect many or all users. When such events occur, the organization needs to reconstruct the database to pre-failure status. This can be done only if the database was properly backed up in the first place. The backup feature makes a periodic backup of the entire database. This is an automatic procedure that should be performed at least once a day. The backup copies should then be stored in a secure remote area. Transaction log or journal. The transaction log feature provides an audit trail of all processed transactions. It lists transactions in a transaction log file and records the resulting changes to the database in a separate database change log. Checkpoint feature. The checkpoint facility suspends all data processing while the system reconciles the transaction log and the database change log against the database. At this point, the system is in quiet state. Checkpoints occur automatically several times an hour. If a failure occurs, it is usually possible to restart the processing from the last checkpoint. Thus, only a few minutes of transaction processing must be repeated. Recovery module. The recovery module uses the logs and backup files to restart the system after a failure. Audit objective relating to database backup is to verify controls over data resource are sufficient to preserve integrity and physical security of database. Audit procedures for testing database backup controls. First, the auditor should verify that backup is performed routinely and frequently to facilitate the recovery of lost, destroyed, or corrupted data without excessive reprocessing. Production databases should be copied at regular intervals. Backup policy should strike a balance between the inconvenience of frequent backup activities and the business disruption caused by excessive reprocessing that is needed to restore the database after a failure. And last, the auditor should verify that automatic backup procedures are in place and functioning, and that copies of the database are stored off-site for further security.